Hi everyone! I finished the book that I've been reading this week, so I'm going to speak to you about that today. Forgive me if I look a bit red in the face. I've been running around like crazy today doing this, that and the other, which is, quite apt because this week I have been reading The Maze Runner by James Dashner. Now, I have read the Maze Runner books before, but only the first three because he had the initial three and then he did a prequel. So for the book challenge, I've only got three books of the collection, so I'm only going to be reading the main three. And I read it probably, it must have been about 7 or 8 months before the film got released. And I think the film was about August 2014. No, maybe a bit earlier than that. So it was sometime in 2013. I read the book, but I haven't read it since. So it's been quite a gem to go back and reread again. And knowing what I knew about from later books, rereading this, there were so many signs of what was going of little things that I just never picked up the first time I read it. So it was absolutely amazing to reread. Now, obviously, there's going to be people watching this who have no idea what the Maze Runner books are about. So I will give you the gist of it. It is about a guy called Thomas. I should say a boy. He's about 16 years old. And he wakes up in a lift shaft. It's going up this shaft. He only remembers his name. He has no idea where he is, what's happened, how he got there, nothing whatsoever. And the lift opens up above him to reveal about I don't know, 50 boys or something. He's in a place called the Glade. And all of them live there. The Glade is basically a huge kind of square, a section of land, a huge square, and it's all covered in grass. There's animals that live there. It's where they live, where they work, they grow their own vegetables, all this lot. But the key thing that you need to know is that connected to the Glade is the maze. And the maze is what the group of them have to solve in order to escape. And it's this whole thing about trying to figure out the maze, trying to figure out who he is, who made the maze, why they have to do this. But the thing about the maze is that every single night the walls shift. So just because it was one way the previous day, it's not that same way again. In this society of boys, everyone kind of has like a series of tasks. So you got boys that are the builders, boys that are who look after anyone who's sick, called medjacks. You've got boys who work in look after the animals. Boys who work in the kitchens. There's so many different jobs around the Glade for the boys to do. But there's one role that Thomas automatically connects to, and that's the role called the runners. And the runners are the boys that go out into the maze. They stay out for as long as possible, and then they come back before the doors close, because the doors close and open each day, and record what they found, the routes that they took and everything. And it's very important that they get back before the doors close, because inside the maze are these creatures called grievers who have the ability to sting you and make you very, very sick. And it's a situation that if you're locked in, if you don't get through the doors, nobody has ever survived a night in the maze, because the grievers come to get you. So there's so much going on in this book, and I have to say, James Dashner, I will say this loud and proud, this is like one of the best young adult fiction books I have ever read, period. I will say that loud and proud. I mean, it's up there for me with The Hunger Games. For young adult fiction, or in generally in fiction, it is absolutely an astonishing read. The structure of it is very. Because earlier this year I have read Lord of the Flies. When I first read this book, all the little things about the society, how it works, even their language, because they have these very interesting slang words that they use and such. It kept on making me think of Lord of the Flies, but because I've read it more recently and then going to read The Maze Runner, it made it stand out more in my mind, and the ways in which society react to things. So you have situations where, you know, something happens, like somebody gets sick and somebody thinks that they should do this and someone thinks they should do that, and going up against each other, the vote, who should be leader? Is there a key leader? Is there somebody who thinks he wants to be you know, who believes that he is leader when he's not? Where, you know, where do we all stand? Who should we go for? And then Thomas comes along and everything changes when he arrives. And where does he stand in this whole situation? At one point, we have a situation where the creators are the people that are referred to, who formed the maze and such and brought them there. That's what the group referred to them to. And at one point, they send a girl into to the glade, which has never happened before. It's always been boys. So to have a girl turn up is a really significant thing. And the first thing, she wakes up and she says, Thomas, and then passes out. And it's like, so she knows Thomas, but Thomas doesn't know her because his memories have been wiped. So it's, you know, trying to figure out how these people are linked together. Why have they been brought there? And of course you've got the grievers and varying levels of threat. But what I love about this is that it's smart, it's sophisticated, it's written in a way, you know, very... It's one of those books that I think it can appeal to like any age group. I understand because of the darkness of it, why it's more young adult fiction rather than, you know, for any kind of age group. But at the same time, I think it's one of those books that's got such a level of sophistication that anybody can appreciate it. It's just that, as I said in that video that I made with my sister, I don't know if you've seen it. It's on my channel. You know, you can watch it. We started off talking about sequels, and then we went into young adult fiction. And it's true that young adult fiction is just a marketing tag. It's got nothing to do with the target audience who, you know, it's actually written for. It's just saying, you know, young adults could enjoy this, but so can anybody else. It's just, so I would really recommend this to absolutely anybody. It's so well written, has so many great twists and turns, has a great range of characters, and I love the fact that it's about science. It's a post-apocalyptic story where it's not, well, it is about survival in regards to, you know, surviving the maze and all that lot, but the reason why they've been put in the maze, it's got a depth to it that other books don't have. Now, a reason why I put it up there with the Hunger Games, now the Hunger Games is very exceptional, because that has got a smartness, a sophistication, and all this lot, but it's at a different level than the Maze Runner, because there's a political aspect to it that is so intriguing and so relevant to today. I think that's why it's notched up a bit more further in my books in regards to my favourites, you know, of young adult fictions and such. But the Maze Runner is just below it. I absolutely love the Maze Runner books. I love the characters as well and how they are formed, and you can see, and I have to admit this, when I read it both times, I could see aspects of myself in many characters, and I kept on thinking, oh, okay, in this situation I would definitely be this character, or I would be that character, or I'd be thinking like that character, because, you know, they are so relatable and so well written. I love Chuck. I think he's an absolutely amazing character. What happened with him had me in floods both times reading this book. I absolutely adored him. Thomas is a very interesting character as well. Obviously, because he's our main character, and we follow him throughout the entire book. He has to be able to connect on a level that's very different from the other characters. You know, as he is the eyes of the person reading this book, in regards to, they don't know what's going on, they don't understand where they are or anything, as Thomas doesn't. So the way in which he has been written has been very very clever, and that whole thing about the truth being revealed about what Thomas really knows about the place and the situation, but having his memory wiped. It's very intriguing, and James Dashner has been a fabulous writer in forming these stories all together. Other main characters, Albie, Gally, and Newt, I love as well. Oh, and Miho as well. He's fantastic, the head of the runners. I love the fact that, well, actually, I'm going to flag up spoiler here. Well, it's only a minor spoiler, but still spoiler. I love the fact that because how it's science related, how the characters are actually named after scientists. So you got Newt, is Sir Isaac Newton. Thomas is Thomas Edison. Albie is Albert Einstein. I love how he's threaded the science, linked to science, into it. It's very, very clever. So, as I said, I will recommend to absolutely anyone. I haven't read the prequel, so I don't know how I'd feel about that. Maybe that's a book I could get next year and read. But I will definitely, these are kind of, along with like the Hunger Games, Harry Potter books, and that, these books will not be disappearing off my bookshelf. I will be keeping these for as long as absolutely possible. It's a phenomenal story, amazing read. James Dashner is one of the best young adult writers I have come across in recent years, and he deserves every single praise he gets for these books. Now, of course, because it was such a phenomenal hit, there had to have been a film version. Now, the film version of the first Maze Runner books came out in 2014, as I said before. Now, as a film, it works. It keeps really quite well to the book, really quite close to the book. Yes, they've had to change some things around because theatrically there's aspects of the story that doesn't quite work, so they've made a more visual version, but I can forgive that. It's one of those situations where, kind of like the Lord of the Rings films, where they've tweaked some things, they've changed some things, they've taken some things out, but it still keeps to the tone of the book, it keeps the flow of the story, it keeps you engaged in that world, and I can totally forgive every single change. There are a few little tweaks though, even though saying that, I'm confused as to why they did it, just because I'm just thinking the knock-on effect to the next books or films as well. So here we go. I'm going to flag up spoiler. If you don't want to know spoilers for the film or the storylines of the book, stop now. But if you want to carry on, then do carry on. And if you stop now, thank you for watching. And if you've got any comments or whatever, then do let me know. Right. So here we go. Spoilers. Right. With Gally, there is a decision that Gally makes at the end of the film, in like the last, I think it's like 5 minutes or so of the film, which I was a bit perplexed by. Now, the whole thing of what he does, I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to do too much to spoiler, but obviously I have to say some things in this last part of the video. That's a flagged up a spoiler. Now, what Gally does in that last like 5-10 minutes of the film has huge significance in the third book. I won't say how, but it does. And what they did in the film was that they made it so that he just did it. He chose to do it. It was totally up to him. But in the book, he is forced to do it by the creators. They literally got a hold on him where they can physically make him do whatever they want him to do. They've gotten into Gally's head, and he physically does. He's saying, "I'm sorry. They've got hold of me. I can't stop it," and does what he does. So to change it so that it is completely his choice to do that, I was quite taken aback by when I saw the film originally. I've rewatched it after I finished reading the book this week, and I was still a bit about it, just because of where I'm thinking further for the final film. But then again, I can see why visually it was more striking to do. There's other moments like that, like for example when there's this whole thing of finding the exit to get out the maze, and they find it through what's called the Grievous Hole, where the Grievous come from. And in the book, it's very clever how James Dashner has used science again and gravity to be able to show where the Grievous Hole is and everything. I really liked that. I thought that was great. But in the film, they do this whole thing of finding a tracking device, and the tracking device leads them to the hole, which is just a bit weird, but because again visually what they do, it wouldn't work. How the book's written on film, they've done it a different way. And another thing that I found quite interesting that they changed was that when the runners have been out running and they've come back for the day, they run to a hut at the other side of the glade, and they draw exactly the routes that they've taken and everything, and stick them in a box, and that's trying to figure out the sequences and everything. And the sequences are revealed to be words, but in the film they've chosen to do numbers. So and they, instead of on paper, they actually make a 3D model, because visually that's more stunning. So as you can see, they still convey the story, they still follow it, but they've taken certain aspects and tweaked them slightly. There was one thing in the book that I really wish they had done, which I can kind of see why they didn't do it, but then at the same time, because I'm again thinking further afield for next films and such, there's this whole thing about Thomas and Teresa, should I say, how they know each other, and they actually can talk to each other in their minds. And they didn't do that in the film at all, but that has, as I said, quite significance to later on. It's I can, but I really wish they had played that out. Instead, they did like loads of dream sequences which don't happen at all in the books, to be able to convey the story of the past. But again, visual stuff, it's the way it is with film versions. But overall, I really would recommend the first Maze Runner film. As to the second one, that's a different story, but I'll get onto that next week, because obviously I'm reading a series of books, so I will be reading the next one for the next week. But I'll do obviously a separate video announcement as usual. But overall, I'm astonished when I read The Maze Runners. I think James Dashner is a very exceptional writer. He deserves every accolade that he gets for these books, really up there with like The Hunger Games and other, my top book series ever. It's up there with The Hunger Games and Harry Potter's for me, I have to say. I think it's absolutely amazing. So so that was The Maze Runner by James Dashner, and I will be back as usual saying what the next video will be in a separate video. Right, I'll see you then. Bye.